Shadow at the Water's Edge is one of the more popular Nancy Drew games. It's got a really cool setting, the characters are great, the story is serious, and the puzzles are challenging. It's also popular because it's scary. Whenever someone makes a ranking of the scariest Nancy Drew games, this is always in the top 3. I enjoy the game, I agree, it's one of the best entries in the series. I don't think of it as one of my favorites, though. Some of the puzzles are deal breakers for me. I've said that about other games, too. The Chemicals puzzle ruins Haunting of Castle Malloy. Fox and Geese makes me dislike playing White Wolf of Icicle Creek. In the same way, I always look forward to playing Shadow at the Water's Edge until I remember I'll have to do the Master Sudoku and the huge nonogram at the end. And if those aren't long and tedious enough, there's also the pattern matching puzzle with over 100 shapes that must be colored separately. Other people don't like Bento or the portrait backing puzzle. Those puzzles stop me from giving the game my full endorsement. Pretty great game, outside of the bad puzzles that drag it out for over an hour. The game starts with Nancy arriving at the Ryokan Hiei. When Nancy says her name, a portrait of Kasumi shakes, then falls to the ground. Shattered glass goes everywhere. Takai angrily says, "Do you believe me now? She doesn't want her here. Tell her to go, now!" This is a good opening, which sets the right tone for the game, and it's the only time we see Takai outside of her designated location. I'm a little confused by this scene, though. Takai makes it sound like they had a fight over Nancy and the ghost long before Nancy first arrived. But why would they do that? What made Takai think the ghost doesn't want Nancy here? Did Takai have a bad nightmare about the ghost the same night they took Nancy's reservation? Why does she think the ghost has a particular aversion to the presence of Nancy Drew? Miwako gives Nancy a room key, talks proudly about her robot cat Suki, and she's evasive about why Takai is upset. Miwako's an okay character. I wish she had more to do than complain and be annoyed by Nancy's intrusive questions. When Nancy leaves the hotel lobby, Bess and George call. Even here at the start, Bess and George are pretty great. It's funny how George complains that Bess can't work the phone. Nancy never meets with them, but it feels like they're a big part of the game. I might even say they play a larger role as phone characters here than they did as in-person characters in Ransom of the Seven Ships. The layout of the Ryokan is pretty good. The bottom floor has a hallway on the left and right. The left hallway has the entrance to the baths. When you try to go in, you meet Rentaro, or as Nancy calls him, Rentaro. He is Miwako's boyfriend who works as the handyman. He warns Nancy the blue banner means baths are for men only, and he stumbles on his way back to the garden tool shed. I think it's a good introduction for Rentaro. He's the most talkative character and rather funny. I like how he constantly tells jokes. It's a sharp contrast to Miwako and Takai, who both act like they've never heard a joke before. Also, unlike them, Rentaro's pretty straightforward. He tells Nancy outright there is a ghost here that scares everyone away, even the obnoxious ghost hunters who purposely come here for ghosts. Rentaro gives Nancy a puzzle book, which has nonograms, Sudoku, and renograms. I like the puzzle book. It's a good challenge for puzzle lovers like me, and it sets you up for the big Sudoku and nonograms puzzles later. There's no big renograms puzzle later. Maybe that's because they had one in the last game? I feel bad for anyone who thought solving all of the puzzles was mandatory, because I'm sure it takes over an hour to do them all. I do think the setup is weird. Every time you solve a puzzle, you have to go back to Rentaro and ask for a new puzzle. Why is that necessary? The next puzzle is on the next page of the book. Nancy should not need help finding it. The right hallway of the Ryokan has a cultural room where Takai works. Takai's okay, she's kind of dull because she talks slowly and at length. Both she and Miwako are deliberately restraining their emotions, which makes it harder to connect with them. Rentaro says Takai gives hilariously angry lectures, which doesn't seem true. I was going to say, I like Takai better at the start, where she's angry and insists the ghost hates Nancy. But that's what Renata does in the next game. She's the older woman who continually insists the monster will kill Nancy, and I don't think that worked well. So I don't know what could be done to improve Takai's character. Takai says she must always worry about the guests, especially now. When Nancy asks what that means, Takai flat out ignores her. Maybe that's why I don't like Takai so much. There are multiple times where she completely ignores what Nancy says. At least Miwako actually responds when you ask a question she doesn't like. I should note, Nancy says, "What do you mean?" about 20 times in this game. It's a little odd. In older games like Message in a Haunted Mansion or Ghost Dogs in Moon Lake, I don't think Nancy talked often enough for her to be able to repeat something 20 times. Takai gives Nancy 3 lessons over the course of the game. I think I would like the game better if it was 3 days long, like Warnings at Waverly Academy or the final scene. I don't like fumbling around with Nancy's phone to reset the time. That happens too often in this game for my taste. Takai's first lesson is katakana, or writing. You need to spell out Nancy's name in Japanese by making 15 lines. If you don't do it perfectly enough, you're forced to start over. I don't like this puzzle, it's too difficult. The game is too picky about what counts as a good line. It generally takes me about 10 times to get it right. The ending has a joke about Nancy being bad at calligraphy. I suspect they purposely made this puzzle harder than it has to be, just so that joke would make sense. When you return to the lobby, you see a German woman complain her family's terrified by all the strange sounds and screaming. Gee, I wonder what she's talking about. We don't really hear any screaming in this game, do we? The woman insists on leaving this terrible place. There's a similar scene later on with an Australian guest. I think it's really cool these scenes are part of the game. Arguably, it's the first time a Nancy Drew game has had one-scene characters. Even though we only see these characters from behind, it must have been a lot of work to design and animate them. It really shows how far this series has come. After the second guest leaves, Miwako gets mad at Nancy and complains at length. That was a dramatic scene. The last important room in the ryokan is Nancy's room, room 24. Inside is a folder with some envelopes and a list of nearby locations. There's also a box with Nancy's school supplies. Nancy teaches English class during the day. It seems unfair that Bess and George get a fun vacation while Nancy has a working vacation. PG Krollmeister gave Nancy this trip as a reward for solving her last case. It's rude of him to pretend it's a free vacation when she has to work half the time. It's kind of fun to grade the English homework that Nancy has in her room, but it's a totally optional challenge. Other than that, Nancy being an English teacher has no effect on the game. I think making her a teacher was just an excuse to have the entire game take place at night. It's scarier that way. Speaking of scary, the first time Nancy goes to sleep, she sees the shadow of the ghost, floating past her window. When Nancy gets up to look, she finds nothing but a ripped screen. She decides it's probably just her imagination. Nancy tells Bess and George about it when they call. It's funny how unsurprised they are that Nancy went on vacation and accidentally uncovered a mystery. Bess thinks the ghost stuff is spooky, while George thinks it's cool. She suggests that Nancy look into how ghost hauntings are faked. Honestly, it's kind of a surprise Nancy isn't an expert at debunking ghosts by now. Bess and George also say they've met Yumi, Miwako's older sister. Yumi has a bento booth at the expo at Matsue. To get there, Nancy needs the train pass and dictionary from her suitcase in the closet. You leave the ryokan and use the dictionary on the sign to see the train station is to the left. The train puzzle is difficult but fun. You have to go from station to station. They're connected by different color lines. To reach the expo at Matsue, you have to take the blue line to Tochigi, the gray line to Seto, the orange line to Fuji, and the brown line to Matsui. Luckily, you only have to do this puzzle 3 times, once for all of the 3 important places on the map. Once you visit those spots, the game automatically remembers the route. It's very good. You don't have to solve this puzzle over and over. It would be terrible if you had to do that every time you went somewhere. I love the techno music at the train stations. The music in this game is great. That song is the best of them all. You can visit Matsue on the first day of the game, but Yumi's not there, so there's nothing to look at besides a display on robot cats and the entrance to the expo. When Nancy tries going inside, she gets kicked out for not having a ticket. It's kind of frustrating that Bess and George are on the other side of the door, but they never come out to meet Nancy. Yumi's bento stand is colorful and upbeat, just like her. Yumi's a fun character. She's always cracking jokes like Rentaro, and she's probably the most take-charge character of the game. She's a little pushy though. She starts by forcing you to make bento for her. I think the bento box challenge is fun. I like it. It's far from being the only puzzle in the series where the challenge is to put pieces in the right spots, but it feels unique. I like the stylized graphics. Maybe I'm just a sucker for cute animals. And food. It looks really delicious. I want to eat that bento. I won't do the bento challenge 10 times in a row, but it's fine for a quick puzzle that you only have to do 3 times. That said, some people really hate bento. I don't know why. I saved my hate for the Master Nonograms puzzle. You want to put the 9 bento pieces on the board. The game gives you clues, like a pig piece is above a sandwich piece. The solutions are semi-random. For example, in one solution, the bottom row is all the same kind of animal. The order of these 3 foods and the type of animal is randomized, meaning there are 24 possible versions of this one puzzle solution. That definitely screws up the people who want a single solution that they can copy. While I like Yumi, I think there are too many conversations with her. In particular, after Nancy gets a picture from Yumi, there's a conversation like, "I like the picture you sent me." "Thanks!" Yumi sends you 7 pictures, so that 2-sentence conversation appears 7 times on the list. It really clogs up the conversation list. It's also hard navigating Yumi's conversation list, because there are a few conversations you want to avoid. They make Yumi mad. She refuses to talk to you unless you leave and return later. I'm oversharing about this topic. I'm just saying, it can be hard to navigate Yumi's conversation list in order to find the important conversations you must have in order to beat the game. In the first important conversation, Yumi gives Nancy her phone number and the key to her apartment at Kurame. Yumi's very trusting with total strangers, isn't she? The apartment is very pink. There are bento boxes on the counter. The shelf has a letter from her mother, conveniently written in English. There's a DVD in the closet, which you can play on the computer. It gives you a static-filled scene of the ghost. Nancy later gets a weird black and white picture sent to her phone. I'm told this is a play on the scary movie The Ring, but I've never watched it, so I can't be sure. You can print out the picture as an Easter egg, so that's cool. When Nancy returns Yumi's bento boxes, Yumi gives you a phone charm. You could do bento boxes for phone charms. Phone charms are kind of neat. I just find it kind of annoying how every game after this one seems to have a phone charm challenge. I don't like phone charms that much. When Nancy talks about Yumi's outfit, Yumi makes you do another bento box challenge. As your reward, you get the password to Yumi's computer. The password is a group of colored dots which are sort of shaped like the letter L. I like the challenge of finding the correct dots on her computer. It's fun, and considering how unforgiving this game's puzzles are, I'm surprised there's only one solution, instead of making the dot placement random each time, with a second part to the puzzle if you're playing on senior mode. The avatar making program on Yumi's computer is fun. It's a basic dress-up program that you see in a lot of Barbie video games. I like this better than the similar dress-up minigame in Phantom of Venice. My only complaint is that you have to send each avatar to your phone separately. It would be easier if you could send all 9 avatars at once. Heck, why can't Nancy plug her phone into the computer and get the avatars on her phone that way? She plugged her phone into a computer to do photo work in the last 2 games. Even though the Avatar program rules, the real prize in Yumi's apartment is a ghost hunting book, hiding under a pillow on Yumi's bed. It's by paranormal expert Savannah Woodham. Her business card is inside, but the chapter on Ryokan Hiei is not. When Nancy calls Savannah, she's greeted by Logan, the rude assistant who happily hangs up on her. Not one to be discouraged, Nancy calls Bess and George for help. George volunteers Bess to flirt up a distraction. The plan works like a charm, because Bess is so charming. George later calls to let you know it's safe to call Savannah. As part of this puzzle, you have to check the broken portrait, which is now in Rentaro's shed. He lets you fix the backing, which is another puzzle fans really hate. You want to move the pegs around so no wires overlap. I've seen this puzzle in other video games. It's fine if you've got like 5 pegs and 10 wires to deal with. This one is more like 15 pegs and 40 wires. It's a huge pain. It would help if the game highlighted the wires that are overlapping so you know which ones need to be moved. It generally takes a long time to solve this puzzle. It's not very fun. Junior mode is a little easier, but it's still a huge pain either way. When you solve the puzzle, you find a certificate signed by Savannah Woodham, which says the Ryokan is ghost-free. There's also a newspaper article written in Japanese. All the characters refuse to translate the article. You even get a game over if you ask Miwako to translate it. That's pretty harsh, and it begs the question of who put the article behind the portrait when everyone acts like they had no idea the article was here. Nancy asks a coworker at the Japanese English school to translate it. I'm just kidding. She asks Savannah Woodham to translate it. Savannah won't talk to you if you haven't found that news article first. Savannah's an okay character who definitely adds to the fear factor of the game. She explains the various ghost haunting tricks, while still leaving open the possibility the ghost is real. Personally, I prefer Logan as a character because he tells jokes and stuff, instead of being scared by his shadow all the time. Savannah tells you to mail the article to Logan, which you do by putting it inside an envelope from Nancy's room, then leaving it at the front desk with Miwako. I think it would make more sense if Nancy left the envelope at the door to the expo, not at the Ryokan. It's gotta be inconvenient for Logan to go all the way to the Ryokan just to pick up an envelope. The same goes for the envelope Nancy leaves for George later on, only it's a little extra cruel because it means George visited the Ryokan, but she didn't bother to check in on Nancy while she was there. Logan later texts you the translation. It says 15-year-old Yumi found her mother dead in the bath area. Police initially treated the death as a crime, not an accident. I wonder how long ago Kasumi died. It doesn't help to say it happened when Yumi was 15, when we don't know how old she is now. I also wonder how long ago it was when Savannah visited the Ryokan, and how long after Kasumi's death that the ghost stuff started up. All of the characters refuse to talk about Kasumi's death. I've seen a lot of fans complain that Nancy is too rude and insensitive in this game. It's true, Nancy keeps asking about their dead mom, even though it's clear they don't want to talk about it. At the same time, how is Nancy supposed to talk about the ghost stuff without ever mentioning their mom? If they don't want people to know what happened, why did they let Savannah come here and write a book about it? Still, Nancy could be nicer. She should take the hint and stop bugging the sisters about Kasumi. Takai's the one who really believes in the ghost. Nancy should take her ghost questions to Takai. Or maybe she should take her questions to Rentaro, who's enough of an outsider that he would be more willing to talk. Also, I don't know why Nancy can't look up information about Kasumi's death on the internet. It is clearly public information. This is far from being the only thing in the Nancy Drew series that she could bypass if she knew how to internet. There is a part 2 to the Logan storyline. Logan refuses to give you Savannah's book. When you call him later, Logan wants your help with Bess. He'd like to get her a present, but he doesn't know what she wants. Nancy says Bess wants a copy of Savannah's book. That was Nancy being pretty slick when talking to a reluctant person. Why can't she be that good at navigating conversations when talking about Kasumi's ghost? Logan reluctantly agrees to get Nancy a copy of the book if she helps him ask Bess out on a date. You have to call him back another time, though. This annoys me for some reason. I wish these two Logan conversations were combined into one phone call. Maybe it could be combined with his earlier phone call where he agrees to translate the article. Logan says he has the book, but now he wants to know what clothes Bess would like. Use the avatar program to send him an outfit. Is he seriously going to buy Bess a new outfit on the first date? I'm pretty sure you have to call him another time to confirm he'll give the book to Bess. The book later arrives for Nancy at the front desk. The chapter on the Ryokan has a large footnote about EVP. This pairs with the pachinko parlor. First, Nancy has to visit the baths where Kasumi died. The first time you do this, there is a terrifying scene where the ghost appears in the mirror and attacks. I think it's the scariest scene of the game because the ghost looks more alive and realistic here than in the other scenes. It honestly feels like the ghost is coming right at you, the player. The broken mirror remains as a reminder of the scene. It wasn't a bad dream, it really happened. The actual hot springs bath seems pretty relaxing. There's an achievement if you visit it often enough. The changing room has a number of baskets that you can search. One has a paper about Japanese superstitions. 2 of them happen to Nancy. Her room number is changed to a 4, and her name is written in red ink. I guess that's kind of scary, but I probably wouldn't have noticed if Nancy didn't point it out. There are other scares, like the doors in the hallway slam, and there are wet footprints coming out of the wall of Nancy's room. Those are scary, yeah, but after that mirror scene, they don't seem so bad. One basket has a card for unlimited plays at the pachinko parlor in Cure. Nice! The parlor's a pretty flashy and exciting location, as you'd expect. There's a photo booth here! If you try using it, the photo of Nancy is too blurry to see her face. She has red hair and a purple headband, which kind of makes her look like Daphne from Scooby-Doo, although I always thought of her as more of a Velma. There are 3 pachinko machines you can play. Use the card on the slot to start. You click on the yellow dial to shoot out a ball. The longer you hold down the mouse, the farther the ball shoots out. I always end up getting a huge traffic jam because I don't have the patience to wait 2 seconds in between shots. You get 50 shots! It takes forever if you do them all separately. You get points every time a ball goes into one of the 5 black holes. You need about 1,300 points to get the prize that Nancy's interested in. It's a comic book about EVP. You need both the comic book and Savannah's book to start the EVP challenge. That seems like overkill to me. I would be fine if the game only made you get one book, not both. When you talk to Rentaro about EVP, he gives you a recorder. He mentions he's making a new recorder that will send an audio message to everyone you know. That is a terrible idea, which would result in tons of pointless spam. I do not want the ability to send butt dials to multiple people at once. Savannah's book says the tree is a good place for EVP. Use the recorder there and listen to it and Rentaro's shed. Nancy hears Miwako and Yumi fighting with each other. When Miwako calls Yumi a brat, Yumi throws something in the water. I don't know anything about EVP besides for what we see in this game. It seems weird to me that Nancy can record background noise at a tree, and it results in her hearing a conversation that took place at least 10 minutes earlier. Shouldn't that be impossible? Also, the conversation is 4 times longer than Nancy's original recording. Nancy goes under the bridge to find what Yumi threw. It's the key to Takai's room. Nancy notices a rock puzzle here. You have to pick up the various rocks from the garden, then arrange them according to the book in the lobby. That gives you an origami puzzle. Takai's second lesson is origami. You need to match the unfinished origami to the finished origami. For example, to finish the crane, you have to fold the wings up. You have to return to Takai's room and take out the origami book to start the second origami puzzle, and I like that one better. You need to select the correct fold from a list of 3. Do it correctly 6 times, and you see a picture that shows the bamboo in the garden has a fake top. Get a screwdriver from Rentaro's shed to open it. Inside is a plastic bag with Miwako's half of the nonograms puzzle. I'm going to assume it was hidden for her and she never found it. Snooping when the characters aren't around is another big puzzle. Takai's room has a red card on the floor. It's for the Krollmeister security system behind the front desk. You have to insert the 5 cards in the right order, then rotate them to match the picture. I don't care for this puzzle. There's a similar glass tile puzzle in the next game, and it's much better than this one. Solving the puzzle gets you a key for every room that ends in 8 or 9. Suki the robot cat is protecting a box on Miwako's desk. Nancy asks Bess and George for help. They find the creator of the robot cats at the expo. He thinks George is so captivating and beautiful, he'll give her the code to turn the cat off if she solves a master Sudoku puzzle. The puzzle arrives at the front desk, and I like Sudoku, but this puzzle is too big to be fun. Even if you're blindly copying the answer off the internet without thinking, it still takes about 10 minutes to do the puzzle. That's how big it is. It's 5 normal Sudokus combined into one. It would work better if Junior Mode had 3 Sudokus instead of 5. One major problem is that if you make a mistake, there's no way to tell where it is. There's 369 numbers in the solution. Good luck trying to find the one that's off. It'd be nice if Nancy gave players regular verbal clues like she does in other games. You know, she says, "Perfect!" or, "I think I made a mistake somewhere." She does comment when you finish the entire puzzle. It would be better if she did that for all 5 separate Sudokus, not all 5 of them together. Nancy puts the correct solution in an envelope and gives it to Miwako. George later calls and says the correct command word is mate. Nancy uses it on Suki to get a puzzle box. There's a flyer about puzzle boxes at the Matsue train station. Basically, you highlight 1 or more pieces and move them around in different directions. If you get a move correct, a little tab pops out. This puzzle's okay. I think it's pure guesswork. I don't know if there's a way to know in advance which move is correct. Senior Mode has 2 extra moves. Inside the puzzle box is a tile piece for the wall of the baths. This is a tangrams puzzle. We've had them before. It's fine. Solving the puzzle opens a peephole into the baths, which is not fine. That's creepy and wrong. Nancy sees a secret bathroom. Rentaro and Miwako are arguing over his plan to move to the city. There's a jump scare when Miwako's face suddenly appears right at the viewing area. She looks right at Nancy. I don't understand how she doesn't see Nancy here. I also don't understand what she's saying because she talks in Japanese. I'm not sure why this is the one place a character speaks in Japanese. If you told me a character uses Japanese once in this game, I would have expected it to be somewhere else. After this scene, Rentaro asks Nancy to get him a cat collar from the pachinko parlor, so he can use it as an apology gift. Once you do this, you can take the star card from Rentaro's desk. This card lets you open up the walls between rooms in the ryokan. With this and the key that opens doors ending in 8 or 9, you pretty much have unlimited access to all the rooms. Somewhat disappointingly, the rooms are all empty. There's nothing to do or see in them. Except for room 35, the first time Nancy enters it, she gets stuck. The doors are locked behind her, and the room starts filling with gas. This feels like a deliberate attempt to kill Nancy. I'm surprised she doesn't bring it up at the end of the game. The balcony door is locked with a tedious color puzzle that I dislike. You have to fill in colors following the correct pattern, so all 6 slices of the lock are identical. This would be fine if you had to do, say, 20 to 40 pieces. Not over 100. If you make a mistake, there's no way to tell where it is. You're basically forced to start over again. If I was Nancy, I would ignore the puzzle and simply punch a hole through the door to get some fresh air. Unlike the other puzzles in this game, you don't get any information or new items for solving the puzzle. As I said, the puzzle never gets mentioned again. It's just there for the sake of having a puzzle and a death scene. Going back a little bit, the puzzle box Suki is guarding also contains an envelope with the password to Miwako's computer. Nancy needs to open it. First, she must do Takai's final lesson in Japanese culture, the tea ceremony. Takai places 9 items on the table, saying the name and purpose of each item as she does so. The puzzle is to correctly label all 9 items, so it's a memory challenge. That's not bad. When you solve the puzzle, the lights go out and the ghost's shadow appears on the balcony. I have no idea how Takai is able to sit through this and act like nothing happened. She's supposed to be the one who most believes in the ghost. Return to Takai's room when she's not there. Since you've finished the tea ceremony, you can take the teapot from the cabinet. Use it on the fire pit in the lobby to create steam, and use that steam to open up the envelope with the computer password. This part makes me nervous because if you don't do it fast enough, you get a game over scene. The password is Takakawa. The calligraphy book in room 18 shows the correct symbols, so you can type in the password. That gives you a list of all the guests who have stayed here recently. As Nancy says, you need to figure out which room is never given to any customers. That's room 33. I sometimes mess up this puzzle because the game doesn't accept it if you check the computer on your own. Savannah has to tell Nancy to check the guest register first. Otherwise, it doesn't count. That's unfair. All that does is punish players who looked at the computer too early. I think it should count if you check the computer on your own. After checking the register, you need to call Savannah again. She remembers her room had a bird carving on the wall. Why didn't you say so the first time, Savannah? Nancy goes to room 33 and moves the bird carving to open the secret passage to the baths. These baths are appropriately creepy and menacing. The water is muddy, the tiles are broken, and the wall is bricked shut. You can tell this area was abandoned after Kasumi died here. Well, semi-abandoned. We did see Miwako and Rentaro come here to argue. Weird place to have an argument. There's a bento paper showing Yumi's been here. Speaking of Yumi, she sends you a picture after you find the abandoned baths. Yumi sends you pictures when you do certain things. It's the game's way of making sure you can't get to the ending sequence without doing everything first. Once you get all 7 pictures from Yumi, Nancy realizes it's a puzzle. Go to the photo booth at the pachinko parlor and rearrange the photos to form Japanese numbers. The trick is that the 3 pictures on the right are all pictures with 2 different characters. The 4 pictures with 1 character all go on the left. When you solve the puzzle, Nancy can ask Yumi about the secret message. Yumi congratulates Nancy for figuring it out. Yumi then forces Nancy to do bento. This is a pretense. She's purposely keeping Nancy late, so Nancy will be forced to spend the night at Yumi's apartment. That's where you use the secret message. You enter the 4 numbers under the frog on Yumi's shelf. This gives you Yumi's half of the nonograms puzzle. I'm going to assume it was hidden for her, but unlike Miwako, she actually found it. This is followed by a scary scene where green words appear on the window, spelling out the sinister message, "I know your secret, Yumi." As some people pointed out, it's not explained how the culprit did this scare. Maybe it was a dream? The Master Nonograms puzzle is in the abandoned baths. It's another annoyingly long and difficult puzzle, with no way to tell if you've made a mistake somewhere. I don't like it at all. It's a 25 by 25 puzzle, meaning there are 625 tiles that have to be filled in. A 15 by 15 or 20 by 20 puzzle would have been much better. Another reason to dislike this puzzle is that it doesn't match Rentaro's puzzle book. Here, a dark tile means space is unassigned, While in Rentaro's book, a dark tile means a space is filled. Here, a light tile means space is filled, while an X means space is empty, which again doesn't match Rentaro's book, which has no X's at all. Rentaro's puzzle uses an empty space to mean the space is empty, which is far more intuitive. I don't like the nonograms puzzle. Every single time I end up just copying the solution from the internet, which still takes forever. It's no fun. Once that terrible puzzle is done, a secret compartment opens. It has a letter from Kasumi to her daughters. She hopes they'll work together and take care of each other when she's gone. She gives them permission to ignore Takai's demand that Yumi should run the ryokan. There's also a sword here. When you take it, Nancy's attacked by the ghost. This is another scary scene. Nancy screams as the ghost pushes her across the room into the water where Kasumi drowned. Nancy has a puzzle to escape, and it's certainly creepy how you see the ghost glaring at you from on top of the water. The puzzle is to cut the ropes, so there's a clear path that leads from the top to the bottom. When you solve the puzzle, you can see the ghost lying in a heap in the corner. It's a robot! Nancy says the elbow joint is clearly the thing Rentaro was working on in his shed. Now we know who the culprit is, and I wish we could confront him right away. It would make sense if we could go directly to the end of the game from here. But no, the game forces us to have a 5-minute conversation with Takai, all about Kasumi's letter. Nancy accuses Takai of being the culprit. She thinks Takai is using the fake ghost to manipulate the sisters into doing her bidding. It doesn't make sense for Nancy to say this when she knows the culprit is Rentaro. Takai confesses she knew about the letter. She hid it from the sisters because she was afraid of losing them. Takai also confesses the night Kasumi died, she had plans to go downtown. Takai lied and pretended to be sick to make sure Kasumi stayed at home. That's why Takai blames herself for Kasumi's tragic death. After this, 3 items appear in Rentaro's shed. One is the recorder he talked about earlier, the one that can send an audio message to everyone you know. The second item is a door-o-matic, which opens every door in the ryokan. That's super useful. I wish we could have gotten it earlier, instead of having to mess around with multiple keys in the star card. The last item here is a pink work order. Use Nancy's dictionary on it to see Rentaro has to finish room 33 today. It's not said what exactly he's working on. It looks like he's fixing the sliding wall with a wrench, but why? It's the room that never gets let out to customers, so what if that wall gets stuck? Nancy confronts Rentaro, who quickly confesses he's the one scaring the customers away. He wants to force the ryokan out of business, so Miwako will have to move to the city with him. That explanation makes sense, and really, Rentaro has to be the culprit. He's the only character with enough technological know-how to perform all the hauntings. Rentaro's arms look weird to me in these scenes. His veins are popping out? They weren't like that earlier, right? It's just creepy. Rentaro threatens to lie to Miwako to get you kicked out of the ryokan. I doubt this would work. I am pretty sure Nancy would get a chance to defend herself before Miwako forced her out. And if not, Nancy could go to Yumi and tell her everything. There's a puzzle where Rentaro stops talking and glares at Nancy for a while. Nancy has to use the correct item to stop him from leaving the room. You have to use the door-o-matic. That shuts the door right in Rentaro's face. After this, Nancy dumps a bunch of items on the table. You get another puzzle to pick the correct item. You want to pick the recorder, so Nancy can send Rentaro's confession to everyone else. Both these endgame puzzles have the same solution. Use the new item you just got from Rentaro's shed. Maybe it would have been better if Nancy got those items earlier. That would make it less obvious which items you have to pick. Because when the game hands you 2 items right before the endgame puzzles, obviously those are the 2 items you need for the puzzles. Rentaro gives an emotional defense of his actions. Nancy gets the option of letting Rentaro confess to Miwako. If you don't take it, Miwako kicks him out and he's never heard from again. If you let Rentaro confess, Miwako lets him stay, but he's gonna be working a long time to earn her forgiveness. I like how there are two endings. I think it works better here than it did in Danger by Design. The rest of the ending is the same, no matter which option you pick. Nancy shows everyone the letter, and they agree to give the ryokan to Miwako. The sisters become closer as they hang out in the city together, and Yumi starts catering bento meals at the ryokan. Takai's cultural lessons are a huge success, and the ryokan is now extremely popular. There is a joke picture of Nancy with Bess and George at the photo booth. Nancy's face is thoroughly covered with stickers, so you can't see what she looks like. That's a lot like the joke at the end of Secret of Shadow Ranch. Whew, I think I finally made it to the end of this review. This is one of the longer Nancy Drew games. If you watch my Nancy Drew Mega Marathons, you'll know it's 1 to 2 hours longer than the others. I blame the long, boring puzzles for making the game longer than it needs to be. They could make the game shorter by cutting out the EVP storyline. Nancy could have found the key to Takai's room another way. I like the pachinko parlor, but they could have gotten rid of that location. All they'd have to do is move the photo booth to the expo hall. But hey, I don't want to complain too much about the game being long. I'd rather have a game that's too long over a game that's too short. Right, Secrets Can Kill Remastered? Overall, it's a good game, especially if you love scary games. The setting is fantastic, the music is great, and I like the characters, even if they talk too much. The downside is that the game has 3 to 5 puzzles which I really don't like, and it always makes me unhappy that I have to do them in order to beat the game. I give Nancy Drew number 23, Shadow at the Water's Edge, an 8 out of 10.